Emily Thompson had once believed in fairy tales. She believed in vows whispered under candlelight, in shared toothbrush holders and laughter under the covers. She believed that forever was a real thing, until cancer arrived like a silent thief in the night and stole James away from her before Sophia could even form full sentences. James had been the calm to her storm, the man who kissed her forehead when she doubted herself, who stayed up late watching cartoons just to hear Sophia laugh. When he passed, the silence in the house didn't just echo, it screamed. Emily remembered those first few months like fragments from a broken mirror, holding Sophia on her lap as they both cried, answering toddler questions like, "Where did Daddy go?" Drinking coffee she couldn't taste, reading books she couldn't finish. But grief didn't stop time, and Sophia still needed pancakes in the morning, hugs at bedtime, and someone to teach her how to tie her shoes. So Emily did what mothers do when no one else is left to carry the world. She rose. She quit her demanding office job and turned her skills into a remote freelance career. Her laptop became her lifeline. During the day, she built marketing campaigns and strategy decks for clients from her kitchen table. At night, she braided Sophia's hair and kissed away every nightmare. They lived in a modest townhouse on the outskirts of Seattle. It wasn't fancy. The heater made strange clicking noises, and the paint chipped near the window ledges. But it was theirs, and more importantly, it was safe. The routine they built was simple but sacred. Morning waffles, afternoon coloring books, evening walks to the park. Emily learned to find joy in the smallest things, the sparkle in Sophia's eyes when she told a story, or the quiet satisfaction of finishing a client project after midnight. She didn't think about love. She didn't have time to think about love. Her entire world had narrowed down to just 2 beating hearts, hers and her daughter's. And honestly, that felt like enough. Until one rainy afternoon at a quiet neighborhood coffee shop, a stranger held open the door for them, and everything began to change. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of Seattle rain that doesn't pour but lingers like a whisper. Emily had just finished picking up Sophia from preschool. The two ducked into a cozy neighborhood coffee shop to wait out the drizzle. Sophia clutched her favorite stuffed bunny in one hand and a cupcake in the other. But the moment she tripped, the cupcake slipped from her hand and splattered onto the floor. Tears welled in her eyes. Her lower lip quivered. Emily reached for napkins and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mommy will get you another one." But before she could stand up, a warm male voice spoke, "Hey, don't cry, sweetheart. I'll get you a new one. Double chocolate." Standing there, umbrella still dripping and coat soaked, was a man with kind eyes and an easy smile. He knelt to Sophia's level, gently handed her a fresh cupcake the barista had just boxed, and said, "I believe this belongs to a brave little girl." That was the first time Emily heard his name, David Richards. He introduced himself as a construction site supervisor currently working on a project just a few blocks away. "I saw the little one fall and figured I'd help. Can't resist a good cupcake crisis," he chuckled. Something about him felt calming. He didn't just speak to Emily, he saw Sophia. He included her in the conversation. He asked about her favorite doll, made her laugh, and even gave her bunny a high five. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Emily caught herself smiling without trying. They ended up sharing a small corner table that day. Emily sipped her latte. David drank tea. Sophia colored on napkins with a crayon she found in her mom's bag. They talked about the weather, about work, and briefly, carefully, about loss. "I've been through some hard things," David said, "but I try to focus on the present. Life's too short for bitterness." There was nothing pushy about him, no red flags, just warmth. And when he asked, "Mind if I see you two again sometime?" Emily hesitated only for a heartbeat, then nodded. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was something rarer, the return of hope. The proposal wasn't flashy. There was no violin quartet, no candlelit dinner, Just a quiet Sunday morning, Sophia building a tower of blocks in the living room, Emily sipping lukewarm coffee in her robe. David slid a small box across the table. "I don't want a perfect life," he said. "I want a real one, with you and Sophia." Emily was stunned. Her heart raced. It had been 2 years since James passed, and she had promised herself she'd never rush anything ever again. But David had shown up again and again in quiet ways that built trust. He read bedtime stories, fixed leaky faucets, took Sophia to the park when Emily had deadlines. He felt safe, and after so much pain, safe felt like a miracle. So she said yes. They decided to keep the wedding small, intimate. Just close friends, a few neighbors, and Emily's parents, who were grateful to see her happy again. But David's side, empty. "No family?" Emily had asked, once gently. David had looked away for just a moment, then sighed. "I haven't spoken to them in years. It's complicated. I'd rather not bring up that pain on our day." Emily didn't press, because haven't we all lost someone in some way? She chose empathy over curiosity. She told herself, some people don't have families. That doesn't make them less worthy of love. The ceremony took place in a tiny, ivy-covered church at the edge of the city. Sophia wore a flower crown. Emily wore soft ivory. David cried during the vows, or at least it looked like tears. They danced, they laughed, they became the Richards family that day. But in the back row of the ceremony, a single chair remained empty, reserved but untouched. And though Emily didn't notice it at the time, someone in the audience did. At first, it was just reminders. "Sweetheart, pick up your toys before bedtime. Don't speak while adults are talking. Finish your food before leaving the table." Emily didn't think much of it. David had always been firm, a bit old-fashioned maybe, but polite, calm. In the early months of their marriage, nothing felt particularly alarming. But then the reminders became corrections, and the corrections turned into commands, and eventually, commands gave way to shouts. One evening, Sophia spilled a glass of juice during dinner. David slammed his fork down, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet kitchen. "For heaven's sake, Sophia, how many times do I have to tell you to be careful?" The 5-year-old froze. Her eyes widened, her shoulders hunched. She whispered, "I'm sorry," and tried to wipe the mess with trembling fingers. Emily forced a smile. "She didn't mean to, she's just tired." David said nothing. He kept eating. Later that night in bed, she gently brought it up. "You snapped at her pretty hard tonight." David didn't look up from his book. "She needs structure, Emily. If you coddle girls, they grow up thinking the world will give them everything." Emily stayed quiet, because part of her, the mother, the nurturer, felt that was wrong. But another part, the widow, the woman who was still learning how to raise a child alone, wondered if he had a point. After all, James had been too sick to ever really help raise Sophia. Maybe this is just how dads are. But the next time Sophia left her shoes in the hallway, David didn't just shout. He made her stand in the corner for 20 minutes. No dinner, no cartoons, just silence and shame. Emily sat in the next room, her heart twisting, but she said nothing. Because David called it discipline. And discipline, he said, was love. Emily had always worried she wasn't doing it right. She hadn't grown up with the perfect model of parenting. Her own mother had been passive, her father distant. She had learned love through trial and error, holding Sophia when she cried, apologizing when she got it wrong, learning bedtime routines through YouTube videos and exhausted instincts. Being a single mom wasn't just hard, it was lonely. There were no second opinions at 2 a.m., no one to say, "You're doing fine." So when David stepped into her life, confident, experienced, older, he filled a role Emily didn't even realize she'd left empty. At first, she welcomed his advice. "I think Sophia needs more structure," he'd say gently, or "Don't let her interrupt you, it teaches bad habits." It sounded reasonable, helpful even, but slowly the tone shifted. One night, after Sophia threw a tantrum because she didn't want to brush her teeth, David sighed and said, "You're too soft on her, Emily. Especially for a girl. Do you want her growing up thinking emotions fix everything?" Emily blinked. That didn't feel right, but it also didn't feel wrong enough to challenge, because deep down, she feared he was right. What if she was being too gentle? What if her way, the hugs, the understanding, was actually weakness? Was she raising a child or coddling one? And wasn't this what Sophia needed? A father figure, someone to show her boundaries. She found herself repeating David's words in her head, especially for a girl. The phrase echoed like a warning disguised as wisdom. When Sophia flinched at David's voice, Emily noticed. But she also remembered the parenting blogs that said kids needed consequences. When Sophia started avoiding eye contact, Emily's stomach twisted, but she blamed it on stress, on herself, on the world. She never blamed David, because David said, "Don't be emotional, be effective." And after years of doing it all alone, Emily desperately wanted to believe in someone. It started with little things. Sophia no longer greeted Emily in the mornings with her usual sing-song, "Good morning, Mommy." Instead, she'd be curled up in a corner of her bed, awake but silent. She stopped running to the door when Emily came home from errands. She stopped asking for extra stories at bedtime. Her laugh, once loud and full of light, was replaced by quiet nods and downcast eyes. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Emily asked one morning, kneeling beside her daughter. Sophia blinked slowly and whispered, "I'm fine, Mommy." But her voice had lost its music, and her eyes, those bright, expressive eyes, looked like they were hiding something. Emily noticed her daughter flinched when David entered the room. Not always, but enough to raise a flicker of worry. Sophia used to jump into his arms. Now she watched him from a distance, her little hands clutching the fabric of her dress like she needed to hold on to something. Still, Emily hesitated. She remembered what David had said. "She's overly sensitive. You baby her too much. Kids these days are just dramatic." And wasn't Sophia still eating, still drawing? Didn't she still say, "I love you" at night? But Emily saw it. The way Sophia tensed when David raised his voice, the way she stopped singing while playing, the way she whispered, "Sorry," even when no one was angry. It was like her world had shrunk to tiptoes and silence, to waiting for moods to shift, to watching shadows instead of chasing light. Emily wanted to believe it was just a phase, just growing pains, just adjustment. But deep down, she knew. And so did the audience. And at this point, the viewers are screaming silently, "Emily, please open your eyes." It came like a gift Emily didn't expect. A major West Coast tech client had reviewed her past work and wanted to offer her a contract, a 3-day consulting trip, all expenses paid, with a payout that could cover months of bills and set her up for bigger deals. She hesitated. Sophia had been quieter lately, withdrawn, sensitive in ways that made Emily's gut twist, even when her mind dismissed it. But David was thrilled. "This is exactly what you've worked so hard for," he said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You deserve this, Emily. Go, focus on your career. I'll take care of Sophia." He said it with such certainty, such calm. And Sophia, hearing them talk, looked up and whispered, "I'll be okay, Mommy." Her voice was small, her eyes unreadable, but she didn't cry. She didn't protest. Emily told herself this was good, that it meant she was raising a strong, independent girl. She packed light, just a carry-on and her laptop, kissed Sophia on the forehead. And for the first time since James passed, she felt like her life was moving forward. David stood in the doorway holding Sophia in one arm and waving with the other. "You two will be just fine," Emily said from the taxi. She believed it. And that's what makes it so terrifying. The night before Emily's flight, the house was unusually still. Sophia sat on her bed in her favorite pink pajamas, the ones with tiny stars on the sleeves. She wasn't playing. She wasn't talking. She just stared at the floor, swinging her legs slowly back and forth, back and forth. Emily walked in with a smile. "I packed your bunny in your overnight bag just in case you sleep over at Grandma's soon," she said playfully. Sophia didn't smile. Instead, she looked up, eyes wide, searching her mother's face as if looking for a secret. "Mommy," she whispered, "when you go, I'll be alone again. With Daddy, right?" Emily blinked, caught off guard. "Honey, yes. But Daddy will take good care of you." Sophia's small hand reached out and grabbed a fold of Emily's shirt tightly, so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I don't want to be alone with him," she said, barely audible. "Not really." Emily crouched down, brushed her daughter's hair gently, and tried to reassure her. "Sweetheart, you're just nervous. 3 days will fly by, and Daddy loves you." Sophia didn't answer, but her hand still held on to Emily's shirt. And in that moment, the warning was right there in that grip, in that whisper, in those eyes that were pleading, even if the words weren't strong enough. But Emily, exhausted and clouded by trust, didn't see the storm building. She kissed her daughter goodnight, whispered, "I love you," and turned off the light. She didn't notice that Sophia's small hands were still shaking. The first night, she called right after the client dinner. She was tired but excited. The meeting had gone well. Emily walked back to her hotel room, balancing heels in one hand, cell phone in the other. She hit David's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Everything's fine," he said quickly. Sophia ate dinner, took a bath, and went to bed early. Emily smiled. "That's great. Can I say goodnight to her?" A pause. "She just fell asleep. Let's not wake her." Emily hesitated just for a second, but told herself it made sense. The next morning she called again. "Still asleep," David said. "Rough night. She was tossing and turning. I finally got her settled down." Emily's stomach tightened. She didn't know why. That evening, she tried again. "She's in the bath," David replied. "Maybe later." Later never came. Day 2. "Can I talk to Sophia?" "She's not feeling great. I'll tell her you called." Day 3. "Please, David, just put her on for a second." "She's napping. Don't make a big deal." By then, Emily wasn't just anxious. She was starting to feel that something was off. Not just with Sophia, but with David. His voice had changed. It had lost its softness. There was something mechanical, robotic-like. He was reading a script. And more than anything, she noticed how he always answered before Sophia could. No, "Let me go get her." No background noise. No sign of her voice. Just his. Only his. And that silence, that 3-day stretch of not hearing her daughter's voice, rang louder than any scream. And now the audience is holding its breath, whispering, "Something's wrong. Something is very, very wrong." She landed early. The contract was signed, the deal was sealed, but her mind was somewhere else. Emily skipped the celebration dinner, moved her flight up, and took a taxi straight from Seattle Tacoma Airport. She checked her phone again. No new texts, no missed calls. David hadn't replied since yesterday. The cab pulled up in front of their house. Emily stepped out and immediately felt off. No porch light, no giggles from the window. The curtains, all of them, were pulled shut. The kind of shut that feels intentional, like someone didn't want the world to see inside. She walked to the door. No barking from the neighbor's dog, no wind, no birds, just stillness. She unlocked the door and stepped in. "I'm home," she called, voice high, hopeful, breaking the silence like glass. No response. Her suitcase hit the floor with a dull thud. She stepped into the living room. David was there, sitting on the couch, facing the TV. News anchors murmured in the background, but he wasn't watching. His eyes were blank. His clothes were wrinkled like he hadn't changed in days. He didn't even turn to look at her. "Hey," he said flatly, "you're back." That was it. No smile, no hug. "No? How was your trip?" Just a man slouched, unshaven, lifeless. Emily's heart started to pound. "Where's Sophia?" David didn't blink. "She's sleeping," he said. "Probably tired." Emily's fingers curled into her palm. She hadn't heard her daughter's voice in 3 days. Now, she couldn't even hear her breath. And in that moment, the audience knows the storm isn't coming. It's already inside the house. She didn't wait for David to say another word. Emily turned on her heel and walked down the hallway. The floor creaked beneath her feet, the kind of sound that feels louder than it should. Each step closer to Sophia's room felt like walking through a dream. Or a nightmare. The door was half open. The pink light from Sophia's night lamp spilled across the hallway like a warning. Emily pushed the door gently. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Sophia was lying on the bed, not curled up like usual, not tangled in blankets from a restless night, but flat, arms by her side still. Her face was pale. Her lips had a faint bluish tint. There were bruises on her cheeks, across her arms, red marks around her neck like fingers had been there tightening. Emily froze. Her brain stopped working for a full second, as if it couldn't comprehend what her eyes were seeing. Then she ran. Sophia. She dropped to her knees, hands shaking, scooping her daughter into her arms. Sophia's head lolled slightly to the side. Her breathing was faint, but it was there. Thank God, she was alive, but barely. Emily felt the coldness of her skin, the unnatural weight of her limp body, the bruises, the silence. She turned, ran to the living room, holding Sophia tight. "David," she screamed, "what the hell happened?" But he didn't even move. He just looked at her, expressionless, like all this was normal. And now the audience isn't just breathless. They're breaking, right along with her. Emily's fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. Sophia's body was growing colder in her arms, her lips almost gray now, her eyes half open but blank. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on," Emily whispered, her own voice cracking. She opened the dial pad, pressed 9, then 1. David stood up slowly from the couch. "If you call the cops," he said, voice low, "you'll go down too." Emily froze just for a second. "What?" she whispered. "You left her here," he continued. 3 days while you chased your career. That's child endangerment. You'll lose her either way." His face calm, dead calm, like he wasn't threatening her, just stating facts. But Emily looked down at Sophia, bruised, wheezing, barely conscious, and something inside her snapped. She pressed the final 1. Put the phone to her ear. 911, what's your emergency?" "My daughter," she choked out. "She's 5. She can't breathe. She's cold. There's bruising. A lot. Please, please send someone. Please." David exhaled sharply behind her, clicked his tongue, then sat back down like this was all just annoying. Emily rocked Sophia gently as she recited the address, tears streaming down her face, one hand cradling her child, the other shaking, but steady on the phone. The dispatcher said help was on the way. Emily didn't let go of Sophia, not for a second. She whispered over and over again, "You're okay. Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere." But in the corner of the room, David sat motionless, watching, waiting, and for the first time, he looked afraid. And at that moment, so is the audience, not of what's coming, but of what already happened. The ambulance lights flashed red and white through the rain as 2 paramedics rushed up the steps. Emily stood in the doorway, soaked in panic, holding Sophia tight. One paramedic took the child swiftly. The other, taller and older, froze mid-step. His eyes locked on David. The duffel bag slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a thud. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." David didn't flinch. He met the man's stare, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. But Mark Davis, 18 years of trauma response, war zones, overdose calls, fires, stood there visibly shaken. "Do you know him?" Emily asked, voice hoarse. Mark didn't answer. He just stared at David, then slowly stepped back, like he had just seen a ghost. "He said his name's David Richards," Emily offered, her voice cracking. Mark's face changed from disbelief to pure alarm. "No, that's not his name." He looked at the other paramedic, eyes wide. "That's Michael Harrison." Everything stopped. The air, the moment, even David's fake calm evaporated. His pupils shrank. Mark turned to Emily, voice urgent but soft. "You need to get away from him, right now." This is the moment the mask falls, not just for Emily, but for the audience. The monster has a name now. David didn't resist. Not when the police arrived, not when the cuffs clicked shut, because he knew it was over. But for Emily, the nightmare had just begun. At the station, the detectives laid it out. David Richards didn't exist. His real name, Michael James Harrison. He was a registered offender, a repeat abuser of children. He'd fled prosecution 6 years ago after the brutal case of a 7-year-old girl named Lisa Davis. Emily's blood ran cold. Mark, the paramedic who dropped his bag, was Lisa's older brother. He sat across from Emily in the hospital waiting room, hands clenched, voice quiet. "He came into our lives like he did yours. Nice, kind, helpful. Until one day, I found my sister curled up in the closet, her arm broken in 2 places." He paused, jaw trembling. Michael disappeared before the trial, changed names, grew a beard, moved states. Nobody ever found him. Until now. Emily wept, not just for Sophia, but for every child this man had ever hurt, and for every woman who had trusted him. Mark looked at her gently. "This wasn't your fault," he said. "He fooled us all." The audience doesn't just fear Michael now, they mourn the trail of pain he left behind. Emily's call triggered a full alert. Police units swarmed the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as sirens wailed and tires screeched. Michael Harrison was halfway through stuffing cash into a backpack when the front door burst open. "Down hands where we can see them." He raised his hands slowly, no resistance, just that same chilling calm. At the station, in a gray-walled interrogation room, Michael sat across from 2 detectives. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't deny anything. He just leaned back and said, "Some kids, they need to learn fear early. That girl, she was soft. The mother made her weak." One detective clenched his jaw. The other left the room. Emily, watching from behind the glass, gasped. It was the first time she saw him as what he truly was. Not broken, not misunderstood, just evil. Emily sat outside the emergency room, fingers trembling, eyes red from hours of crying. The doctor stepped out. A tall man in scrubs with a clipboard, but the heaviness in his eyes said more than any test result could. "Are you the mother of Sophia Thompson?" Emily stood up so fast her chair toppled behind her. Yes, I am. Please, how is she?" The doctor took a slow breath. "She's stable, but..." He glanced down at the file. "There are clear signs of manual strangulation, multiple bruises, 2 fractured ribs, and significant signs of psychological trauma." Emily froze. The hallway spun around her. If it had been even 3 or 4 hours later, we would have lost her. The words hit like a sledgehammer. She collapsed into the chair, hand over her mouth, tears breaking free again. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, advocates, survivors all watched in tense silence as the trial of Michael Harrison, alias David Richards, began. Emily sat in the front row, clutching Sophia's small pink hairband in her palm like a talisman. Her daughter was recovering, but the wounds inside and out were far from healed. The first to testify was Mark Davis, the paramedic who had recognized Michael. When I saw his face, I froze, because that man was the reason my sister Lisa can't sleep at night. He ruined her life. I swore if I ever saw him again, I wouldn't stay silent. Then came Lisa, her voice shaky but firm. He was my neighbor. My parents trusted him, but he broke me, and I've lived in fear ever since. Emily wept silently. Her turn came, and when she stood, the room held its breath. I trusted him with my daughter, and he tried to destroy her, but he didn't break us. We're still here, we're healing, and he's going to pay. The judge read the sentence. Michael Harrison is hereby sentenced to 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. A wave of silence fell over the courtroom. Then, finally, relief. Emily stood at Sophia's hospital bedside. Her daughter's tiny fingers were wrapped in gauze. She hadn't opened her eyes in hours. Machines beeped softly behind them. Emily whispered, almost choking, "I gave her to a monster. I thought I was giving her a father, but I gave her pain." She sat there, face buried in her hands. The guilt was suffocating. Then a gentle voice spoke behind her. It was Mark Davis, the paramedic. He stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Emily, stop. You did what any mother would do. You trusted love. That's not a crime." Next to him stood Dr. Carol Nyan Sophia, physician, her voice firm but kind. "You didn't fail her. You saved her life. And you stayed. You fought. That's what real mothers do." Emily looked up, her eyes brimming. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. Just a little. 6 weeks after the trial, Emily sold the old house. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. She packed everything into a moving van except for one thing, the pink hairband Sophia wore the day they met David. She folded it into a small memory box, a reminder, not of pain, but of what they survived. Their new home was smaller, older, but felt warmer. There was no shouting behind closed doors, no tension clinging to the walls, only soft music in the morning, laughter over breakfast, and sunlight that finally felt safe. Sophia began therapy. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight, but the shadows grew thinner each week. Emily sat beside her every night. Sometimes they read, sometimes they just talked. One evening, Sophia asked, "Mom, can we have a rule? Like, always tell the truth, even when it's scary." Emily nodded, holding back tears. "Yes, baby, no more secrets, ever." They didn't share blood, but they shared something more powerful, survival. Mark Davis, the paramedic who once froze at David's face. Lisa Harrison, the survivor who once feared her own reflection. Dr. Carol Nyan, the calm in every storm. They didn't knock on Emily's door. They stayed. Every weekend, the new family gathered. A checkered blanket, peanut butter sandwiches, orange juice boxes, and mismatched sunglasses. Laughter from Sophia echoing across a sunlit park. Emily once thought that sound, that joy, was gone forever. But here it was, loud, real, undeniable. Lisa braided Sophia's hair while telling her how brave she was. Mark helped Sophia build a kite that crashed 5 times but flew the 6th. Carol brought storybooks and sometimes just sat silently smiling. Emily looked around and whispered to herself, This is what family feels like." 2 years later, Emily Thompson stood behind a podium, a spotlight, a microphone, and a room filled with women holding their breath, some with bruises, some with silence that had lasted too long, all with stories just waiting for permission to be told. Emily didn't begin with statistics. She didn't quote a textbook. She simply said, "If your child's laughter disappears, if they flinch when someone raises a hand, if something inside you whispers that something's wrong, believe it. Believe you." The room was silent. Then one woman stood up, then another, and another. Tears streamed down their faces, but this time they weren't crying for what they lost. They were crying for what they now dared to claim: safety, truth, a future. Sophia sat in the front row holding Mark's hand. Next to her, Lisa wiped her eyes. Carol filmed every word. We survived, and now we speak. Sometimes the most dangerous people don't knock down doors. They walk in with warm smiles and soft voices. But abuse isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence, in obedience, in fear, behind a child's eyes. What we learn from Emily's story is this: always trust your gut. If something feels wrong, even if you can't explain it, listen. Protecting your child doesn't mean being paranoid, it means being present. And most of all, remember, family is not just who you're born with. Family is who stands beside you when the house burns down. If this story moved you, if you believe in giving voice to the unheard, then don't leave silently. Subscribe to our channel. Because somewhere out there, another Emily is waiting for someone to speak up for her. Your click might be the start of someone else's survival.